Welcome back to 40's on the 80's deep dive on Lethal Weapon. We've previously concluded Act 1 and sort of up through Act 2. We're somewhere in the middle in there. But we are going to continue our discussion. Myself, Johan Redman, along with Dan Sampson and Rick Baldwin. So sit back and see if you can make heads or tail out of the rabbit holes that we continuously find and jump headfirst into. Welcome back to Deep Dive on Lethal Weapon.
I don't think there's anybody that can talk as much as we can. We can just, you know what I mean? We could waste an hour and a half just talking about
but
Red.
everything we've said has been legit, has been thoughtful, thought-provoking in my opinion. It's actually making me excited to talk, and I'm not a big talker.
Yeah.
You know, so we're making some extremely valid
All right,
points.
I got one thing I have to get off my chest.
Don't get too loud.
This.
You know I got to tone all this
yearbook
stuff down in
photo.
editing.
The yearbook photo.
There, thank you very much.
Go on.
Look at her photo compared to
Stop
everyone
yelling.
else's on the page.
You're still yelling.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, the yearbook photo. Why the hell is her yearbook photo so...
She's got her back
Just
turned
weird.
to the camera, and it's like,
Right.
Yeah, did she
Right.
pay extra
Very
for that?
Yeah,
it's a
very,
glamour
very
shot.
posed.
It's a glamour
That's
shot.
true.
For those of you that don't know, 1982's Lethal Weapon tells the story of Los Angeles detectives Roger Murtaugh and Martin Riggs, unlikely and at first reluctant partners who find themselves thrust together to solve the mystery behind the recent death of a young woman. As they delve into the case, a broader, deeper conspiracy begins to reveal itself, involving drug trafficking, corruption, and murder. To crack the case, Murtaugh and Riggs must wade into the depths of this shadowy world and are ultimately forced into a race against time to bring down a criminal empire and save the people they love most. So where are we in this film? Dixie's house is blown up. All right, we know who we're dealing with now. All right, so after there, we go to the Hunsacker's wake by the ocean.
We
The
do.
plot unfolds. He was going to blow the whistle, so they paid a hooker to poison his daughter. So we've got a group of CIA mercenary assassins. They're worried about the father, Hunsacker, Michael Hunsacker, blowing the whistle on them and basically shutting down the operation. So their solution is to kill his daughter, to which I kind of have to question. It's like, all right, so he killed his daughter. What is this supposed to do? He's got a second daughter. He has another daughter. So I guess the threat is legitimate. It's like, hey, if you don't keep working with us, keep your mouth shut, we're going to kill your other daughter.
Right.
Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
That's great. That's a legitimate threat. So once you kill Michael Hunsacker, though, how are they protecting their business by killing him? Anybody?
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, maybe they were just at a point where, like, they can find another banker, right? But they've got to kill this guy before he can give up, like, the whole operation.
So they've got, well, that leads me into another thing. There's, you know, when they introduced that other guy, I don't even remember his name, Mr. Ortiz, but he was like the bad guy in other films. I think he was like the bad guy in Red Heat earlier on, where, you know, they demonstrate the loyalty of Mr. Joshua by, you know, making him burn his arm with a lighter.
Yeah.
What the hell was the point of that? Who was that guy? How does he tie into this story? How
Well, he was just a buyer, right? He was
guess.
going to just buy some of their drugs. He said, because he says to him, "You wish." Because when he grabs his hand, he goes, "You wish to do business, yes?" And the guy goes, "What?" And he goes, "You wish to make a purchase, yes?" And the guy goes, "Yes."
Yeah.
When after he burns his up, so I guess he's just a buyer.
There's no need to force somebody to buy your drugs. You really don't have to spend a lot of time in marketing and advertising to try to get people to buy your drugs. But to find somebody who can launder your money properly, like Michael Hunsacker, now that I think would probably warrant a little bit more attention, maybe a little bit of intimidation to find somebody else, another banker. That would have been maybe a better plot device, a little bit more logical writing, if you will. But
I
anyways,
just think that they were just like, they need to protect the operation ultimately. So, like, you know, the world is not short of corrupt bankers, is it? You know, finance is not an industry that is particularly known for its integrity. So they were probably like, we can find another dirtbag in finance, I'm sure.
So once again, Shadow Company, who is supposed to be operating in the shadows, decides to do a broad daylight assassination from a helicopter at a beachside villa in Malibu.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that won't make the news at all. But we find out at that point that, once again, these people are not to be trifled with. They have resources. Right. Apparently, they have access to a helicopter. A little bit of side trivia on this one. But apparently, the aircraft number that was assigned to that helicopter was the exact same aircraft number that was on Blue Thunder.
Ha! Really? That's good.
Yep.
Very cool.
So they go from that scene where there is a hit at a Malibu mansion to the nighttime scene where Riggs is talking to a hooker. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, only if they were trying to find if Riggs is talking to the girl in the street because he's trying to find. He's trying to find out maybe who is recruiting her co-workers to be part of their organization.
So never mind using the FAA to try to track this helicopter and try to track these guys that actually committed the murder. Let's go talk to the girls on the street, working the street, who might know Dixie and might know Amanda Hunsaker.
Isn't there a scene where Roger is at home and he's had a package delivered and it's a tape?
I think that was before. Wasn't that before Hunsaker's murder, though? Michael Hunsaker's murder?
Was that before Hunsaker's murder?
I think it was. All right. I think that just kind of motivates them to keep investigating the case. But, I mean...
That's right. Yeah, no, you're right. It's the other way around. So, you see him watch the tape. Then the next scene is them at the funeral, right? And he's, at the wake. And he's having a go at him in that private room. Mr. Joshua killed him. I do think that's true. I do think the next scene is the nighttime scene. It's raining, and Riggs walks up to that girl in the street and starts asking her, and he's trying to he's trying to get information about how they get recruited, and then that car pulls around, doesn't it? And they shoot him. And he flies through that window, and then he's like, "Oh, Roger, now I'm angry. Now I'm angry."
So somebody who is suicidal all of a sudden decides to wear a bulletproof vest.
Well, I think he's now got reason to live, hasn't he?
I suppose so. I mean, that would be a major, point of this movie, which, you can almost say that maybe that's the end of Act 2, where now Martin decides he no longer wants to be suicidal.
Yeah, because he has the friendship of Roger.
Yeah. The friendship of Roger. Well, he wants to see the case resolved for some reason.
Actually, you know what? I'm like revisiting this now in my mind. I wonder, actually, if when we talked about when I put forth my idea for the acts, I wonder, because this would be a very, very short Act 2, wouldn't it? It would essentially be 3 scenes. So I wonder, actually, if the end of Act 1 is the conclusion of the dinner at Roger's house. Because you get the sense in that moment that
they decide to work together to solve this case.
Yeah, Martin's turning a corner and feeling slightly better about things. So maybe that's the end of Act 1. And then all of this that we've just been talking about up to the point where he gets shot is Act 2.
In terms of partnership and friendship, I think that is the moment, when they say goodnight at that point, they're bonded.
Yes.
So absolutely. The act in that, in terms of how we've described other cinematic efforts as far as 1, 2, 3, the end of this particular act was them bonding. Not so much that they're deciding to go off on this adventure, but deciding that they trust each other and that they decide to bond.
think that's right. Yeah, I think that's better, right? And then this whole middle section is about them now starting to unpack this case.
Right.
And getting closer and closer to what's really going on.
Yeah.
And then when it ends here, they have, in an odd way, the upper hand. And can move forward into the final, denouement and try and take these guys down.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. So we have Riggs interviewing the hooker on the street. Mm-hmm. Mr. Joshua comes flying up in a car, shoots him with a shotgun. Mm-hmm. Riggs is actually not dead. They pretend he is. Mr. Joshua pretends to be a local news station, KCOP, K-Cop.
Yeah.
Calls the police station and they just give him the details. And then they ask, wait a second, who are you?
Yeah.
Typically, you would want to find out who this person is before you give away details. I mean, again, the whole HIPAA rights and everything else in this movie is right out the window.
Yeah. And as somebody who works with the media a lot,
right.
The last thing you do is just start launching into details that they haven't even asked for. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, that's a pretty wild moment.
So in terms of their operations as well, why would they target Riggs before Roger? because when they pulled up in the helicopter and shot Huntsacker, they shot Huntsacker in the room with Roger. Riggs was outside. He couldn't hear anything that was going on. And Mr. Joshua's whole thing was like,
lethal weapon.
I don't. Well, okay.
I think they're trying to get rid of the guy that's the biggest threat, right? They probably think that.
But to their operation, if Riggs wasn't in there talking to Huntsacker, how big of a threat is he to their operation? He's a dangerous guy, sure, but what does he actually know about the operation? Roger would have been the one that they should have targeted initially. But instead, they do a drive-by on Riggs, pretend he's dead, and then they decide to go to Murtaugh's house and kidnap his daughter.
They go there and kidnap his daughter. Yeah, so maybe it's just an opportunity thing, right? Like they were tailing them. Riggs is out in the open, so they decide to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And then they go and they kidnap Brienne and take her out to the desert. Yeah.
So however they found out that Riggs was out there on the street talking to hookers, is a whole other story.
Yeah.
This shadow company they're very tied up in using daughters as leverage, apparently. But
they sure are.
We see Martin Riggs no longer putting a gun in his mouth. He's actually wearing a bulletproof vest. He actually cares. He wants to live.
Right. Yes.
And this is also the point where he fakes his death, and he's ready to go get these guys. And this is going to lead us right into the dead scene here. So, hang on, fellas. I'm getting there. I'll let you loose in a second. I hear the dogs of war barking. You guys are ready to throw in your 2 cents. They get a call over the radio while they're sitting there, just talking about Riggs being pissed. And they're like, hey, Sarge, there's a body that's been found near your house, which I thought was interesting because I didn't really pick up on this before. I was listening to it again this morning. And they're like, yeah, there's a body been found. I don't care. You don't typically assign police cases based off of the proximity to their house, first off. But the second part of that, he was like, yeah, it's probably blonde with big dimples. How'd you know that, Sarge?
Yeah.
This right here set me on the thought process. Okay, he responds hearing that because it was a couple blocks from his house, blonde dude with dimples, his daughter's boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like she was on a date. Maybe she was visiting this guy and maybe in a car parked somewhere doing whatever it is they do. And that's where she was kidnapped. She wasn't kidnapped from the house. It was a couple of blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So they race to the house. And again, this is kind of humorous. He kicks in the door to his own house. I mean, there's no need. It's your house. You've got the keys. So that part of it's great. He opens up the door, and even though they've just had a drive-by attempted on Riggs, his daughter's boyfriend has probably been murdered. His keen sense of detective skills, he kicks open the door. Oh, there's an envelope on the floor. Let me go ahead and take a look at that. You don't check your mail when you kick in the door to a house. So that's one thing. But because this ties into the plot of the story, he opens up the thing. He sees a letter, and he says, "The bastard's got my daughter." He hands the letter to Martin. And up until this morning, up until a little while ago, about an hour ago, actually, I never knew what that letter said. Dan, any guesses?
No, I don't. Is it it's not a written letter though, is it? Is it one of those isn't it one of those 80s things when they've kind of cut letters out of the newspaper and stuck them on a piece of paper? Is it one of those?
That's what I thought at first, but then as I slowed the screen down, it looked like it was done with like a Sharpie pen. And,
okay.
And there is a Polaroid photograph along with this note that says, "Your daughter looks really pretty naked."
Does it really say that?
That's what it says.
Christ, I didn't know that.
Now think about the leverage though, because shortly after this scene, he hears noises upstairs. His wife comes around the corner. So wife is home and his other 2 kids are home, and they're oblivious. They don't know anything that's going on. So nothing has happened at the house besides this letter being shoved through the
right.
slot.
Yeah, you're right. This is a good point actually, mate. Because I guess I just kind of assumed that she was snatched from the home,
right?
Because that's where they go. But obviously that can't have happened, right? Because they don't know. Like the rest of the family's got no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I'd never thought of that.
Yeah,
that's true.
So that was some dots that I had connected this morning, and then shortly after, the phone rings, and they say, "We want to know what you know. Meet us at the Dead Lake tomorrow." Now, Dan, if I want to know something from you, I'm not going to have you meet me at some random place. I got you on the phone. I can just ask you.
Yeah.
So
But
that,
maybe, yeah, maybe it was always going to be a double cross though. Like they don't really care what they know. They're actually just gonna they're just gonna fucking kill everybody. You know?
okay, well, they went to the house to deliver this letter where his wife and other two kids were.
Yeah.
Finish that job. You know what I mean? They could have sat there like in Commando, upstairs holding the cards. That, hey, happy birthday, Roger. Now you're going to do what we tell you, right? Wrong.
Yeah. 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 That's true.
So that part of it there is meet us at the dead lake tomorrow at sunrise.
Mm.
And they're like, hey, we got the edge because they think I'm dead.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So realistically, if you want to do some sort of exchange for a loved one, you have to have something that you can provide as well in person. Whether it be like, let's say, a thumb drive, hard drive, some files, some photographs, some sort of handoff. I mean, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to try to get information from somebody verbally at a physical location. So this is all just for the sake of action.
Yeah. It is. It's totally a plot device. Yeah.
Yeah. Rick, you've been sitting back like a very patient listener, and I apologize for manipulating the microphone here. But what are your thoughts on this development?
I think that they ran out of shots to keep driving around to to extend the running time, and that was probably one of the reasons. But it also shows the fact that they can go ahead and drop that threatening letter to the house, but yet then vanish. So I think it's a little bit more creepier, and it's more to psych him out. Now he's got to wait till the following day, or
Good point.
So it shows that they could do it at any time. So they're toying with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and all he can do is kind of sit around and imagine what they might be doing to his, daughter. Right. I mean, that is absolutely torture.
Now this takes me back to our discussion about Predator. When they set up a camp, they set up trip flares all around their camp. The wild boar comes through, they kill it, and they're like, hey, where's the body? It disappeared. So it must have come in and snatched the body. Cut to the next scene the next day. So time lapse, right? You don't know what they did in that time. Did they all take naps and go to sleep? So again, similar here, Roger and Martin show up at the house. They get this phone call at dawn tomorrow. What do they do in the meantime? What do they do until dawn? I mean, they're detectives. They have an entire police force at their disposal. They're holding physical evidence. There's a crime scene of where the son or the boyfriend was killed. Any one of these things, they probably could have, maybe got the ball rolling with trying to track these guys down.
If 80s action movies have taught us anything, it's that your regular beat cops in a black and white cannot be trusted to do shit, right? You know what I mean? Like they kind of, this is it. A, it's now personal because they have Rianne,
right?
And then B, the only people that can defeat these bad guys are Riggs and Murtaugh.
And then to have a limousine, and I don't even remember what the other kind of cars were that showed up to this meet.
And a helicopter.
A helicopter flying at roof level, of all things.
And then him driving in his version of the family truckster.
Right, wood panel station wagon. And he drops off Riggs, a little bit further away from wherever it is he's decided he's going to park. They don't know exactly where the meet is supposed to take place. I imagine that this dry lake is a fairly sizable lake. But he goes out and he's waiting. And his big plan is that he has a grenade in his pocket to kind of hold these guys at bay. Whole army of mercenaries get out. They're all wearing suits, very slick, very stylish, very 80s. And they're the ones interacting with Roger, who then pulls out the hand grenade and is like, well, we'll all go up together. And at that point, that's when Mr. Joshua steps out of the limousine looking like he's fresh from the country club and maybe playing some tennis or a round of golf.
Yes, that's right. He's in a cable knit V-neck sweater
a
and
white
polo
one.
shirt.
Right.
Yeah, a white one. He's looking.
Gary Busey dropped like 60 pounds for this role and was actually doing a lot of martial arts training on the set too.
Nice.
Because he was trying to kickstart his career, because before that he was like in Silver Bullet, and then he was having all these issues personally. So this movie was a lot more important to him than it was to probably anybody else in the cast.
Was Silver Bullet prior to this movie?
Silver Bullet was 86, like 85, 86. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he played Uncle Red, so that's a good name.
Yeah.
You could see, like, yeah, he was beating himself up personally outside of, working with, booze and everything else. But when this role came along, this is what he realizes, like, this is what I need to, jumpstart my career again. And he was really disciplined.
Yeah, he looked good in this movie. I give him that. He looked sharp. He looked like he was on it. And,
Plus, he's got that crazy look anyway, so he can always pull off a villain. It's just like William Dafoe. If you put William Dafoe into a villain role, it's perfect.
Right.
He's not an evil guy. He just has that look, and he knows how to play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned him getting in shape, too, because I just did a quick check. But one of my favorites from the 80s was DC Cab with Mr. T.
I never saw that.
You guys haven't seen that
Oh,
one?
you need to.
Yeah, it's a classic. But yeah, Gary Busey is in that one, and he looks to be in horrible shape in that movie. Like he has just been on a bender for a long stretch of time and is, heavy into amphetamines just to keep himself upright. So for him to go from the way he looked in DC Cab to Mr. Joshua, good job, Mr. Busey.
Silver Bullet, that's the werewolf one, right?
Yes.
And that came on the heels of American Werewolf in London and The Howling, I assume.
Ooh, Rick?
Silver Bullet was originally a Stephen King story that they adapted for screen. Since 80's, I mean, anything with Stephen King was going to the big screen. So they cashed in on that. And, I mean, I like the movie. Yeah. But you could tell, like, Gary Busey was struggling during that time. So it was nice to see that he got refreshed. And
had a young Corey Haim in there, too.
Yeah. Very young.
All right, so we are at the Dry Lake, and we're talking about Corey Haim. That was amazing, connecting the dots there. But
this is the genius of this podcast, man.
Well, yeah, but what's great about that is it does tie back in, because when the two of them are walking across the street at that theater, the theater says Lost Boys on the marquee.
Oh my God, it does, doesn't it?
And the reason why I did that is because Richard Donner was originally going to be doing the Lost Boys. And he started doing the setup and then he jumped over to Lethal Weapon, and that's when Joel Schumacher came in and took over Lost Boys.
Wow.
Before we continue on the Dead Lake, I just wanted to say there's a funny line in Lethal Weapon which it's always made me laugh. And this is at the beginning, and it relates to Rihanna's boyfriend, where it's early in the movie, and she's like, I'm going out with whatever his name is, Dylan, on Friday night. Mm-hmm. And Roger goes, is that the one with pits in his face?
Yeah.
And she goes, those are not pits, those are dimples. And he goes, those are pits. When he smiles, I can see through his head. And I just loved it. I just loved that joke. That always made me laugh.
I think I had read somewhere that dimples are actually like a bit of a genetic deformity, something to do with the muscle tissue in the face that causes that to occur.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, some people could look at it as like a beauty mark. Other people can look at it like a genetic deformity. I guess it's all based off perspective, right?
Most chicks like them.
Yeah. Chicks dig dimples, that's true.
Well, like the butt chin.
Yes.
You have lots of chicks that like that, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strong-looking feature, but you can also imagine how it would probably be rough, like for someone like Kirk Douglas when he was a child or a teenager. He probably got made fun of quite a bit, but then once he became Spartacus, it was something to be admired.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at Clark Gable. He had Dumbo ears, and women
loved
him.
He supposedly also had false teeth that he didn't clean very well. And I had read that his female co-stars really disliked the thought of having to kiss him because of how bad his dentures smelled.
Oh, God.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
He was the man in that one.
Yeah, but I also just, look, it's so wild to think about like where we kind of came from. I have a theory that as a species, we're getting better looking. I look at the younger generations, and I feel like they are so much better looking than our generation and the generations that previous to ours. And I think it's nutrition. I think it's fewer people smoking cigarettes. I think it's better exercise. So like there's the world now, I think, has kind of formed itself around the idea of wellness and health. And you're seeing the manifestation of those habits in this younger generation because they're all fucking tall and good looking. I just think we are as a species generally getting better looking. I don't know if we're necessarily getting any smarter, but we're certainly getting better looking.
But I mean, if you were to take the image of, let's say, a Neanderthal man standing next to a modern day androgynous male doing ads for Yves Saint Laurent cologne. And then right next to that, you put the image of a gray alien from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is one of my theories. I think that it might be plausible that aliens are actually humans from the future.
Interesting. Right, yeah, 'cause they've got the humanoid form, right? And
Yeah.
they've kind of shed all of the stuff that they don't need.
All
I mean,
the hair
that's
is gone, the ears are gone, the noses have been diminished, kind of like Michael Jackson. And
This is the most in-depth Lethal Weapon deep dive I've ever heard before.
that's a
did we
great
get to
point.
here?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think any other Lethal Weapon discussion has ever included the range of topics that we've managed to get in here. So, hey, anybody who wants more of this, what is it the kids say? Hit subscribe and like.
Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a nice leave us a nice comment and hit subscribe.
Oh man! I
Or if
almost
you want to
cringed
become a
at that
member
thought.
of our Patreon,
Oh yeah, send $10 to.
Yeah.
I don't know. The aliens idea, you start thinking about, like I've listened to a lot of physicists describe how the possibility of aliens visiting us from somewhere else, the idea of faster than light travel, very implausible. But as you start to discuss faster than light travel, you start to get into the realm of Einstein theories of relativity and the possibility of time travel. So with that being said, someone in the future, our human race possibly could have figured out time travel, which then would link into all of these other TV shows like Ancient Aliens, where they talk about these giant leaps in technology through human history, how they can go from inventing the wheel to space travel. It's mind-boggling to think about how someone could have come to those ideas unless there was some sort of help.
Yeah, well, this is kind of an interesting idea. Like, if we could marry up the two theories, right, with my theory about people getting physically better looking, taller, broader shoulder, they just look better, and then you've got the alien types which have none of those physical attributes, but they always have massive heads, presumably to house a larger brain because that's what they're using. Maybe the human race splits in two, and you've got your aliens, the alien civilization that figures out time and interstellar space travel and leaves the Earth because they just can't stand any longer to be around this group of beautiful idiots.
Right.
Maybe that's human. That's the future of humanity.
Well, they're separating themselves from the workforce. I recently saw on the news that supposedly the top 1% has more wealth than the entire middle class combined.
Oh, now we're getting into it. Yeah, I have heard that too. But I still can't. I mean, I just can't get time travel. I'm not clever enough to understand it. So so for example, right, once something happens on a timeline, it's always been that way. You know what I'm saying? So shouldn't everybody always know what's going to happen? Like take Terminator, for example, right?
Right.
The time travel thing happens, the Terminator arrives, and everything goes completely bonkers. Sarah Connor realizes her destiny and all of that.
Okay.
As soon as that happens, surely it has the retroactive effect of changing the timeline. So then Sarah would always know that she was destined to save humanity, right?
Well,
because there's not a before.
Back to the Future Part 2 theory. They have just branched off into a different timeline because now there is knowledge that didn't exist before the time travel occurred.
So the idea was that actually breaks into another timeline.
That's the idea.
And there is the original timeline just continues going and the Terminator never happened, using the Terminator example. But now there's another timeline in which all of that stuff did happen.
if you want to get into the physics of it, even people who really do believe about the time travel and the other dimensions, that the life that you're living right now, or that you're going to be in jury duty tomorrow, there is another reality to where that's similar, but it's altered. So you've
Right.
got there's other Dans, like there's other you running the same timeline, but it's got different aspects.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, this is the kind of is that the multiverse thing where like every
It starts to get
possible
into that.
permutation
Yeah.
of decision is played out somewhere on some timeline. Is that right?
It plays into some of the theories of people who believe that we're in a simulation
Right.
and why we have deja vu and why the whole Mandela effect occurs to a majority of people.
What's the Mandela effect, man?
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, like the Bernstein Bears, how the spelling is. They release more and more each year. And there's a lot of pop culture things like where everyone now I don't remember this. I remember when the reason why they call it Mandela is because it's named after Nelson Mandela. When he was in prison for, revolting against the government, people thought that he died. And they remember seeing like a funeral on TV for it. Well, he eventually did die, but not at the time when they thought he did. And apparently, majority of everybody thought that Mandela was dead, and he wasn't. But yet they all remember seeing
Really?
stuff for TV or reading things. And then when you go back to the Bernstein Bears, the spelling. And now that one I remember, I'm like, I don't remember it looking like this. I remember the way they're actually saying it.
So
And I've
you-
talked to
yeah.
family members, and they said the same thing. I asked my wife, I asked my mom, and like I went in my kids' room because we still have them. I'm like, sure enough, the spelling is what they're saying it is now. But everyone remembers it being spelled differently. So that's what's leading people into the whole simulation is that everything is programmed in front of you. You're in a game for the most part, and it's being controlled. And that's why it's across the board for people in different countries and everything. It's not just an isolated group. So, I mean, it's an interesting theory to follow. Not necessarily believe it, but I'm not saying it couldn't happen because weirder crap happens to us every day.
So the idea is that something existed, but then through some sort of shift in time, that image or memory becomes altered into what its current state is, but there is still some examples or evidence that it was something different previously.
In Star Wars, I know that was mentioned too. That was one of the bigger ones in regards to what Darth actually said to Luke when he was doing the whole father thing, is that it gets misquoted, but what he actually said was this. And then everyone's like, no, no. He said, but if you go back and watch it, everybody was wrong. What they're saying in the Mandela effect is like, no, he actually phrased it this way. But every time someone quotes it, they're misquoting it.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And Rick, I've got one for our 80s action movie references for that particular thing, that particular phenomenon that you're talking about. I remember growing up, everybody thought that one of the classic lines from the first Rambo film was him saying, "Don't push me," like to Teasel and all those cops, right? He was like, "Don't push me," and but he never says that in the film. When Teasel picks him up and he's giving Rambo a hard time about being a drifter and all of that kind of stuff, he just says to Teasel, "Why are you pushing me?"
Yeah.
That's all he says. He doesn't say, "Don't push me." And then the same. I think he says it later on when he's talking to Troutman on the radio. He says, "I told him not to push it."
The man kept pushing. All I wanted was something to eat.
Now you may have actually seen that if it was in the previews or trailer, because sometimes the trailer will be cut before the final cut is done. So if they decide to take something out of the movie, it could be in the trailer, and then you watch the movie, you're like, where the hell's that scene at?
Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they could have cut that into the trailer. Yeah, and him like firing the machine gun and it being like a dramatic moment and all of that. But yeah, right. You're right. In it could be in the trailer, but so yeah, in the body of the film, he just says, "Why are you pushing me?"
But Red, we should probably take this time machine back to 1987 so we can finish Lethal Weapon and get on with the rest of the show.
Yeah, I'm already getting a headache thinking about this editing project. All right, the Dead Lake. Riggs is set up as a sniper to provide Roger some coverage as he faces off with the group of mercs. He wants to see his daughter. She comes out. Then they want to do an exchange. They're going to let her walk as long as Roger goes with them. Which, again, their whole thing is they want information. They want to know what he knows. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this just seems hugely inefficient in how they're trying to go about finding out what he knows when they, the Huntsacker, they supposedly were trying to leverage him by killing his daughter and then possibly threatening his other daughter. and he felt like he was too valuable. But what do? They murder him, so not so valuable. It just gets a little bit confusing at this point, but that's where the 80s action just has to take over, and you just have to go along for the ride.
You just got they've got to find some way to get Riggs and Murtaugh in close proximity with those guys
Right.
in order to precipitate the big fight, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just a plot device, yeah.
So he's got the hand grenade, and he's like, we're all gonna go out, and he's like, he's bluffing. He would never take a chance on harming his daughter. And he was like, well, this is where you're wrong, buddy, because it's like I'm going to choose how we're both going to die, and she's going to die with me. And Gary Busey just keeps getting closer and closer. And Riggs is way off in the distance with his sniper rifle trying to get a clear shot of these guys. And he's telling Roger, move to the left. And then Gary Busey shoots Roger in the shoulder, pulls out a gun, shoots him in the shoulder, and Roger throws the grenade in their direction, and they all just run away. Like the Holy Hand Grenade in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And it turns out that it's not an explosive grenade, it's a smoke grenade. If you are in a combat environment and you are receiving fire and you're trying to get away, get to cover, one of the things you can employ is your smoke grenade, which makes it hard for a sniper at a distance to see you. Why would they choose a smoke grenade when he's counting on the lethal weapon of Martin Riggs to provide sniper fire cover?
Just thinking it through, I don't see the reason why you would have that unless they thought they were outnumbered, which they are, but not by much, unless they thought it was going to be much worse and they needed that as a distraction to either escape or to find better cover and concealment in that desolate area.
He's in the middle of a dead lake, though. And it's like the only person that would benefit from smoke would be the bad guys, because it would obscure the sniper's view of his targets.
I think I don't think they ever really intended to use the grenade. I think what I mean, it was just like a threat, right? Like, and they probably brought a smoker with them so that there could be no really terrible accidents.
He could have been holding an apple just as easily.
Right, you know what I mean? It's just like, I think he's just there to be like, give me my fucking daughter back, or I'm going to kill everybody. And they're hoping, they're just using it. And he knows he's got the backup of Riggs, so if things go pear-shaped, like Riggs can do something for him. But it was probably more of a safety thing than anything else, rather than like throwing a grenade in the direction of the bad guys and his daughter.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I think it was probably there just because like they had no real intention of actually using it to kill those guys.
Maybe it was a nod to Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid Part 2 when he's about to knock out Sensei, and he doesn't. He honks his nose.
He does.
That's a reach.
I like it.
We'll go with it. So if he throws the grenade, Riggs starts popping off bad guys from a distance with his sniper rifle. Roger takes cover behind his family truckster, and his daughter, I think somehow, well, no, it's like they release her to come closer to him, doesn't she?
Something like that, yeah. And then she runs for it, doesn't she? And gets in the car.
Well, she gets into the limousine. She drives off in the limousine.
The limousine, that's right. Yeah.
So that would have meant that she would have had to backtrack to get into Mr. Joshua's limousine.
Yeah.
Where Mr. Joshua is at this point, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're all just taking cover because Joshua pops his head up a little bit from behind the car, doesn't he? But one of the SUVs, I guess, and he goes, "Damn it, it's Riggs!" Once all the guys start getting shot.
Yeah, he's taking cover in the door jam of the limo, and that's when the general of all people manages to sneak up on Riggs and put his 9mm submachine gun into his ear.
Yeah, I assume he was in the helicopter, because otherwise, how did he get? That is one of the flaws of the dry lake, right? Is there's no cover.
Yeah.
So like, how the fuck would he have snuck up on Riggs?
Yeah, the only thing that would have made sense is if they would have been flying over at a higher altitude with a thermal imager and maybe spotted a body laying out there, and it's like, "Oh, drop me off to the side, and I'll cut around behind him." Hopefully, having enough time to sneak up on him.
But Riggs surely would have seen that, right? Because it's a fucking helicopter.
Yeah.
This is just one of the flaws. I think this scene would have been better shot where there were like legit hiding places. Like, I don't know, like remember the movie Heat?
Yeah.
When they go to the docks and there's all of those kind of like big shipping containers all piled up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think this scene would have been better shot in a scene like that, like a set like that.
Well,
where there would be proper places to hide, and it would have made a little bit more sense.
here's a rewrite that I would buy into, that Riggs never gets snuck up on. He's trying to provide cover. They manage to get Roger and his daughter. They load her in a helicopter and fly away. And then whoever's left in the cars, basically cannon fodder. Riggs is able to kill them off. But he's able to then track them down to where Roger and daughter are being tortured. Riggs then gets captured or held at bay as they threaten Roger and his daughter. And then that's where they could have fit in the whole scene with Endo of torturing Riggs. But as far as the general sneaking up on Riggs, I don't buy it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a kind of an odd thing where when you start to think about it, it's a bit clunky, that bit, I think.
Yeah, and how far away was Riggs? Because the general walks him the entire way from wherever his hiding spot is, all the way to meet up with everybody else. Okay, so we've got that part. Everybody's been captured. So they take them back to be interrogated in the industrial basement of a rock and roll club downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah,
it's like I think they probably buried a lot of industrial factories from maybe the great earthquakes that happened in the early 19th century, and then modern day Los Angeles was built on top of these factories. Maybe that explains how they have such a huge basement.
When he's downstairs getting tortured, I always imagine that Cobra's upstairs, and they're doing like the music video scene
with the sexy robot.
Yeah, with the sexy robots.
Yeah.
Well, they could have easily just next door to Endo. Maybe he took a break from doing his overhead axe workout, clinging the cling, from the axe gang, came over to do his torturing, and then once he was done there, maybe took a bite of his sandwich and went back to the axe gang. So Mr. Joshua is in with Endo, and they're trying to find out from Riggs. What do you know? And he's like, I don't know shit, pal. And he's like, well, I wish I could believe you, but, Endo's going to have to do his thing here. And this scene kind of cracks me up because it's an electrocution scene. They've got him hanging by his wrists. At any point, Mel Gibson could have screamed out freedom. Little nod to Braveheart there.
I don't want to talk about that film.
Ah, well, yeah, you're on the wrong side of that history there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Apologies.
We really came out badly in that one.
I do have, on the other hand, come out on the side of the right there because I have Scottish ancestors who were Highlanders, actually.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Is that right, McKenna?
Yeah. Before they, the history's a little sketchy whether they got kicked out or they left, but they ended up in Australia. So you might know more about that than I do. But yeah. So, anyways, they're torturing him with electric cables hooked up to a sponge as he's hanging from his wrists, and it's kind of funny because as they're shocking Riggs, Mr. Joshua is trying to keep him from swinging around, gets shocked a couple of times as well, and that's actually in the movie.
Yeah, it's such a great detail. That's really true. Yeah.
I think it's kind of humorous. So it's like, did they actually plan that scene, which is funny, or were they actually really electrocuting him to a minor extent, which is also funny? Either way, it's a great scene.
Yeah. And it looks like he's really in pain, doesn't it? Because he's writhing and like that real kind of blood curdling scream that he lets out when he. When he electrocutes him, and it's pretty. That's pretty. I wonder if that was like a holdover from the darker version of this movie that we talked about in part one, right? That there was going to be because it's like it's proper torture. Like he looks like he's really in pain. Yeah. They're not just kind of beating him up in the way that you get that, don't you, in films where like they're trying to beat a confession out of somebody or they beat somebody up for what they want to know, and like it's just movie violence. Whereas that looks really fucking painful to me. Like he's writhing around and he's like, and it's a particularly cruel and sort of well thought out form of torture because it's the electrocution, but he's wet. Like they're doing it with water, right, which makes it even worse. Obviously, right? The conduction is greater, I guess.
Which is interesting because you mentioning that, I started thinking about electrocution scenes in other movies, especially 80's movies and Rambo 2. There's a scene where he's captured and he's being electrocuted. Do you remember that scene?
Is that the one? Oh no, this might be one. This might be 3. Rambo 3 when he with
3
the
was
mattress?
In Afghanistan.
Oh no, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's the one with the mattress, right?
Well, the mattress was in part 2 because there are Russians in the jungle of Vietnam, for whatever reason, and they've got him captured and he's strapped to the metal springs of a mattress, and they're turning the thing. And they cut to a scene of some of the POWs sort of like grimacing because it seems like they've obviously experienced the same kind of torture. But that method of electrocution seems a little bit more feasible, safer for the torture people, whereas Endo and Gary Busey were kind of catching some side effects from Riggs getting electrocuted.
Yeah, which again, it sort of just speaks to like the realness of that thing. Which I think that might be a holdover from the darker version of this script.
Yeah. So I mean, it's Stallone's performance of being electrocuted. I always found to be pretty riveting because he's like twisting and contorting his fingers, as if he's really being electrocuted. So good job, Stallone.
I think it plays into the PTSD factor for the vets that were coming from Vietnam. And that's why you see the more electrocutions coming up when there is a backstory of Vietnam.
Was Endo Vietnamese?
Good point.
No, but I think it just plays into because how you brought up for Rambo 2, because I was going to mention that, and I think that was maybe one of the tropes that they just kind of threw in there, that if they were to do Vietnam as an action movie, that if it came down to that it would pretty much. That's the equivalent of him having a flashback of the war.
Okay. And here's another rabbit hole just popped into my head too. Missing in Action Part 2. Chuck Norris is in the prisoner of war camp, hung upside down by his feet. They put an angry rat inside of a sack and then tie it around his head while he's hanging from his ankles.
Jesus Christ.
And everybody's watching it, ha 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 ha, and then they see blood start to spill from the inside, and they take the sack off, and Chuck has killed the rat with his teeth.
I think he actually probably strictly, if we're all honest, he killed the rat with his beard, not his teeth.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So just real quick before we move on. So what am I thinking of in Rambo 3 then? Because I'm sure there was electric mattress torture in that as well. It was Troutman, wasn't it?
Troutman was getting tortured.
Right, and that was on a mattress. That was on a wire mattress.
I don't recall if that was on a mattress or not.
Oh, I thought it was. Okay, but anyway, we will get to it in a future episode, I'm sure. But okay. So multiple instances of electric mattress torture, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep it moving. So so then that happens. Roger's getting the shit kicked out of him in the other room. Right?
Yeah.
And then it kind of goes back, and Riggs is just laying there, kind of limp, isn't he? He's kind of fucked. And then I guess Joshua leaves the room. And then Riggs grabs hold of Endo and chokes him to death with his feet.
Yeah. Were his feet tied together?
Yeah, a chain maybe. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. He's definitely tied up because I think he kind of like gets him in that one of those kind of UFC style fucking leg locks, doesn't he? Yeah.
But yeah, I was just wondering if his feet were actually tied together or chained together, because then it's like he kills Endo and then gets himself off of that hook.
Yeah.
Frees himself somehow. And the interesting thing is the way he comes in to rescue Murtaugh. He's carrying the dead body of Endo on his shoulders as he enters the room. Why?
He throws it at right? Doesn't he? He throws it at two of the anonymous henchmen.
He comes running and throws a dead body at somebody before rescuing his pals.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's the 80s.
How does McAllister die in this?
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, we're getting to that. Yeah. So he comes in, he dismantles the remaining henchmen that are torturing Murtaugh and his daughter. Mm-hmm. They're now free. They collect the weapons, and Riggs takes this opportunity to try to be a comedian. Let's do what one shepherd said to the other shepherd.
Get the flock out of here. Yeah, it's a stupid 80s quip, right. Isn't it? Yeah.
He could have easily had said, "Hey, Roger, what? Knock, knock." This is not the time or place, Martin.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. So they gather up what they have and then collect a couple of weapons. They start to move out. Riggs shoots somebody who's up in the rafters, who apparently has just been on a smoke break, not paying attention to the fight going on below. And the guy falls down hanging by his ankles. And it's another blonde bad guy. And he's like, "It's not Joshua." All right, keep moving.
Yeah.
So then they emerge into the rock and roll club. And as soon as they come through the door, they shoot somebody at the bar. Nobody notices.
Uh-huh. Right.
Because then they just quietly stroll on past the rest of the patrons in the club until somebody else notices them, who, I guess this club just has a lot of heavy-duty security and people in suits carrying Uzis. Yeah. And they start the gunfight in there, and everybody scatters, and then they spill out onto the street, which again, it's like if you're using like ability to reason spatially, they are at street level in Los Angeles at a rock and roll club, but beneath them is an entire industrial complex, right? Because they've just escaped from downstairs. So it's just the location, the geography, and the architecture just don't really make a lot of sense. But they're out on the street. Now this is where, where's Joshua? Does Joshua start shooting at them at this point?
He's in a car, isn't he? Because then this is the thing where Riggs tries to chase him on foot or something.
Okay, so yeah, I think Joshua is upstairs. The gunfight occurs. He's in the club. He's like, oh shit. So Joshua escapes out onto the street and hops in somebody's car. And the general likewise is street level, gets into another car, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Riggs chases Joshua, and Murtaugh gives him directions on how you can catch him on foot if you turn left or go west. He's headed for the freeway. How he knows that, who knows?
Yeah.
So,
and it's also like probably like the 405 where it's going to be back-to-back traffic at all hours of the day anyway. So like, it's a terrible decision.
Well, yeah, there are cops actually street side as well, because Roger hands his daughter off to a street cop and says, keep an eye on her. And I recall that because there was another video I watched where someone made the comment, why didn't Roger tell the cop, hey, protect my daughter, keep an eye on my daughter, because he might be more inclined to take special care of her as opposed to just some random woman. And he's told, hey, keep an eye on her. But there is a cop there, street side. So Roger kind of falls, slumps down onto the ground, tells Riggs, all right, go get him this way. And then as that whole foot chase ensues, Roger is like wandering down some random alley. Why? I don't know. His daughter is up there. She's traumatized. Why is he, does he need a smoke break? Does he need to chill out? Did he drop his car keys somewhere down this alley? And then this car emerges, and it's the general as passenger with a driver. And we get to see Roger do his old man warming up his neck, takes one shot, kills the driver. McAllister tries to control the car, which is careening out of control, spills out onto the street and flips. And I think that the contents of that car were a bunch of hand grenades and drugs and money. And then the car explodes. So there's the end of McAllister. So then we go from this. McAllister's dead. Joshua has made his getaway. They hop into a car together. Riggs, links back up with Roger. And I think they deduce that he's probably heading to his house. Why? I don't know. I don't know if there was some sort of cue as to that.
I don't think so. I think the assumption is just like, he's like, they know where I live. The rest of the family's there. So that's their next leverage point, right? They're going to go and...
But the only one left is Joshua. So it's like his handler is deceased and he's kind of on his own. I think realistically, he probably would have just disappeared at that point. I don't think he would have gone after Roger's family.
But then we still have to find a way to get him and Riggs to fight it out, right? Because those are the two like physical specimens of the whole piece, aren't they? Right? This is all driving towards the final face-off between Joshua and Riggs.
Yeah, and then let's think about the timing here as well, though. Riggs chases Joshua on foot until at some point on the freeway, Joshua was able to make a clean getaway, and Riggs is like, damn it, he's gone.
Yeah.
So Joshua is on the freeway en route to Roger's house. Riggs has to make his way all the way back to Roger, pick him up, and then somehow they're able to get to his house and write a note and basically set a trap for Mr. Joshua.
Yeah. Again, I think we just got to roll with it. These are all dramatic.
My biggest complaint about Roger's house is the way that Santa Claus is positioned on the
his roof. Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
But if you notice, too, there's a snowman that's similarly positioned on Dixie's house before it explodes. So whoever did the set design probably was like, all right, I got it. I'll take care of the Christmas decorations. They set the trap. And again, this is my house. I'm setting a trap for a bad guy who's going to show up. The last thing I'm going to do is crash a damn car through my living room wall in anticipation of some guy who's going to walk in. So this whole trap is set. That means that they've also had to sacrifice the cops that are street side. That's fucked up, in my opinion. because Mr. Joshua pulls up and he asks these two cops a question, and he kills them both, and then he proceeds on into Roger's house. And that's where, they leave. They find a note, dear bad guys, something or other, and nobody's home. Crashes the car through. He sees that the stick has been wedged into the gas pedal, and boom, there's the lethal weapon, Mel Gibson. He's got him at gunpoint, takes the gun away from him, walks him outside. And this is the point, and I had to actually, just to confirm my dates, this film was made, what was it, 80s? Somebody help me out.
87.
87, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay, so this is Los Angeles police. A couple of years later on, there would be a famous incident also involving the Los Angeles police and the beating of a suspect, which was captured on film.
Rodney King.
Right.
Yep.
So a little bit of foreshadowing here, where it's like all the cops are standing around while one of their own decides to go mano a mano with their suspect, their subject. And this is where we also get to see, the big climax, the face-off between Gary Busey and Mel Gibson using some of their martial arts skills, where Mel Gibson supposedly was doing a bit of training in jiu-jitsu, supposedly some prison-style fighting, as well as there was another martial art that was thrown in as well for good measure. But between the helicopter spotlight, the water spilling, and the close-up zoom of the cameras, it's really hard to see exactly how these guys are fighting each other. It'd probably be kind of humorous if you were to actually zoom back a bit and just watch, Gary Busey try to fist fight somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and basically a lot of different techniques are used, and as happens a lot of time in action movies, they think that the bad guy has been taken care of, just like Alexander Godunov in Die Hard.
I was going to say, very, very reminiscent of the end of Die Hard, right? Yeah.
Yep. And they see an opportunity, and out come the guns with the good guys, and they put the bad guy to bed. I would say that would wrap up Act 3, because now things are about to go back to normal. Riggs is happy. Right. He no longer feels the need to hold on to his hollow point bullet, which isn't a hollow point bullet. He shows up to give it as a gift, and Rianne is there, looking like she doesn't need any sort of psychotherapy. She just looks like a normal kid again. That's great. Very resilient daughter you raised there, Roger. Good job. Mm-hmm. And Roger comes and chases him down and is like, no, I'm not going to eat the world's worst Thanksgiving or world's worst Christmas turkey all by myself. You're going to come on in. And Riggs makes an inappropriate comment about his daughter liking him before.
Does he really?
Yeah, or he just kind of makes a comment to Roger and he's like, hey, I think your daughter likes me. And he's like, if you touch her, I'll kill you. As good buddies tend to joke with each other.
She's about 16, isn't she? Fucking hell.
Well, I mean, apparently this is what buddies do with each other, right? They joke about each other's daughters. Invites him in to join the family, and Riggs is like, hey, mind if I invite somebody in? And luckily, he had just left his truck door open with the dog sitting inside. He's like, whistles for the dog. Dog comes in, and Roger makes the comment about how Burbank the cat is not going to be happy as he fixes the little bulb Christmas light on his front porch before going into his house. Roll credits.
And they never close the door to the vehicle.
He doesn't need to. He's the lethal weapon.
It's just like in Halloween. It drives me crazy when they pull up to the house to go have sex and drink beer, and the guy doesn't close the door to the van. His battery's going to be dead. It drives me crazy.
I mean, anybody who's tried to get back into their car and the battery's dead, you understand the frustration.
It's just like with Home Alone. Why are all the lights on in that freaking house the entire time? Turn some lights out.
Security.
Yeah. Kevin McAllister's dad was... Oh, McAllister. There's a connection between Home Alone and Lethal Weapon.
Oh, my gosh.
And there are theories that Kevin McAllister's dad is an organized crime, because how could he pay for everybody's plane tickets?
Yeah.
Yeah, a trip for 9 people to Paris and that house. What is this guy doing?
So this is a great segue here, fellas, because we have wrapped up Act 3 of Lethal Weapon.
We sure have.
Congratulations.
Well done, boys.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure working with you on these past few episodes. Next time I'll talk with you both will be after Christmas, so Merry Christmas to both of you and your families.
Oh, you guys as well.
Mate. I'm too old for this shit.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring, snowing and blowing a bushels of fun. Now the jingle hop has begun. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells chime in jingle bell time, dancing and prancing in Jingle Bell Square. In the frosty air, what a bright time, it's the right time to rock the night away. Jingle bell time is a swell time to go gliding in the one-horse sleigh. Giddy up, jingle horse, pick up your feet, jingle around the clock. Mix and a mingle in the jingling beat, that's the Jingle Bell Rock.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells chime in jingle bell time, dancing and prancing in Jingle Bell Square. In the frosty air,
what a bright time, it's the right time to rock the night away. Jingle bell time is a swell time to go gliding in the one-horse sleigh. Giddy up, jingle horse, pick up your feet, jingle around the clock. Mix